Welcome to the Secret of America, where we uncover the unsettling secrets that linger just beneath forgotten places and ordinary lives. At the end of Darling Street in Millbridge, Connecticut, a town as old as the country itself, wrapped in mist and whispered suspicion, stood the house. It was an imposing Victorian mansion, built in 1887 by a man named Horace Wentworth, a name as well known as the Iron Gate that kept prying eyes away. I first stepped into that house on the damp morning of October 10th, 1973, pulled by an inheritance I never expected, and a question I was too wary to ask. But from the very beginning, I should have been cautious. My boots creaked on the wraparound porch, and the scent of rain-soaked oak and decaying ivy hung in the air, as if the house itself exhaled a breath that was both welcoming and warning. I still remember the chill that slithered down my spine when my hand brushed the cold brass doorknob, a relic polished to a deceptive shine, hiding centuries of grime. Inside, the house showed its true age. The polished wood floorboards whispered beneath my feet, shadows pooled in corners like forgotten memories, and the faint smell of worn leather and burnt candle wax drifted from the parlors. My name is Eleanor Wentworth, the last surviving heir of a line that once ruled this small mill town with quiet dignity and an iron fist. But no one knew back then that our family's legacy was carved not only in fine wood and stone, but in locked basements and silence. The truth, it turned out, was far worse than anyone imagined. On the day I arrived, my cousin Harold met me at the bottom of the grand staircase. He had the pale complexion of someone never truly comfortable under daylight's scrutiny, and his sharp, dark eyes seemed to flicker with a secret he was desperate to keep. "Welcome back, Eleanor," he said, his voice too low to travel beyond the heavy oak walls. I nodded. "The house is ours by right," he reminded me, "but no one has lived here for nearly 30 years. The family fortune shrank, and the town's whispering grew louder with tales of madness and disappearance." I smiled politely, liking him less with each quiet word. Even though we were related, he had always carried a certain chill. The way he glanced at the basement door unsettled me. "You mean the door that opens inward," he said, looking behind him toward the staircase that descended into darkness. "Because it's not like the others." In a house full of locked doors and forgotten rooms, that basement door was the one that rattled with an unnatural firmness. Normally, Victorian era doors open outward to maximize space. This one opened inward, more typical of old institutions or prisons. The door was painted a chipped, peeling white, set far back from the narrow staircase, and what sent a shudder through me were the deep gouges in the wood. Claw-like scratches on the outside, as if something or someone had desperately tried to push its way in, but had been denied. Where I come from, no door bearing such marks is left unexamined, especially not when it belongs to your own family. Harold shook his head and said it had always been locked, never to be opened by housekeepers or family. At least not by the living. The basement had been sealed since my great-uncle Nathaniel Wentworth disappeared in 1945. Aunt Lydia whispered that something terrible happened down there, but her warnings drifted like smoke through family dinners, never fully grasped or acknowledged. And yet, even in the middle of our rational age, such a closed door screamed of secrets. My first nights in the house were restless. Rain pattered against stained glass windows. Shadows of gnarled branches flickered like ghostly fingers along the walls. The long, dormant fireplace crackled faintly, though no fire burned. I felt the weight of being watched, as if the house were a living thing, breathing uneasily, waiting. Neighbors greeted me with cautious eyes. Some even crossed the street. Millbridge had long since shackled itself with unspoken stories. The Wentworths were once people of great reputation. Mill owners, town benefactors, church patrons. But no one would speak of the basement or the door, often whispered about as the devil's door. The past in Millbridge was buried under layers of politeness and retreating glances, but it was never truly gone, much like the scratch marks, ever present, insolent, mysterious. I decided to explore more. The grand library smelled of mold and forgotten parchment, its shelves bending under dusty tomes and family records. A genealogy detailed the Wentworth line back to the earliest settlers in 1776, men and women who built their fortunes from the mills that powered the town. But the pages containing Nathaniel's life were conspicuously missing. No birthday, no marriage record, only a scrawled note on a torn piece of paper. Lost. He was a brilliant yet troubled man, a chemist and recluse, obsessed with strange experiments that family letters hinted were madness. There was also mention of a sealed basement door, which Nathaniel had ordered locked and barred, the only thing in the modern house he truly feared. What he feared, however, was never spelled out. On the second floor, the bedrooms were cloaked in dust and faded wallpaper that peeled like dead skin. In what had been Nathaniel's room, I found a journal wedged beneath loose floorboards, its cover cracked and fragile. Inside, in elegant but erratic handwriting, Nathaniel documented starvation, shadows, whispers from below, and a door that no one else could open but him. He wrote of sounds in the night, scratches, mutterings, and a sudden darkness that filled the air like thick fog. The more I read, the more the walls seemed to close in, as if the house wanted to swallow the secrets whole, before they ever saw the light. But what no one knew was that there was something else about the basement door. A presence that felt not quite human, a coldness that seeped upward into the hallway, chilling the air, and that strange sound at the bottom of the stairs. A faint scratching, as if nails dragged lazily across dry wood. I stood before the door once more, running my fingers over those deep gouges in the paint. They were fresh, or at least fresh enough to disturb decades of dust and neglect. No one else was in the house, and yet the house was whispering names into the dark. "For Eleanor, you should not be here." The scratches moved, or my mind did. I thought I saw faint indentations where fingers might have pressed desperately against the wood. But only for a second before the light shifted, leaving me with shadows and silence. The town records yielded little beyond somber newspaper clippings about a funeral for Nathaniel. Drowned at the mill pond, his body never recovered. Rumors swirled madness, foul play, disappearance. A wreath of black roses was sent anonymously to the family that same day, with a note reading only, "The door remembers." The house was full of things unsaid, locked drawers in the study, shifting curtains though there was no breeze, portraits with eyes that seemed to retreat when looked at too closely. I felt watched not just by family ghosts, but by a living presence hiding behind that inward, opening door. The deeper I delved, the more I understood that the basement was a cage, and the door was the only thing keeping something, or someone, trapped inside. But what no one dared say was what had been locked away.